and he'll talk all day. that one on too.
While on my way to and fro, trying to do good, and let my goodness show. The enemy came, tried to take my life. He took all I had, and I don't know why. While I was down and needed a friend, lonely, some stopped and looked, but started walking again. They walked right by on the other side. As I dropped my head, I began to cry. Hey, but like a good neighbor, Jesus was there. He said, lift up your head, don't you despair. He says, no matter what, I'll always be there for you. Like a good neighbor, yeah. Oh yes, yes. He bound up my wounds, healed my broken heart. Lord, He put me together where I was torn apart. He gave me a place where I could lie down. He said, peace is yours, right here and right now. I said, oh Lord, please, don't you leave my side. No, no, don't you worry. He said, you are my child. And from then on, whenever I'm depressed, I look to Jesus. He gives me rest. Like a good neighbor, Jesus was there. Lift up your head, and don't you despair. He said, no matter what, I'll always be there.
Welcome. All right. This is okay. So we are chapter 12. I said we're going to try and do 12 and 13. So we have done preparation for conquest. We have done the central campaign, the southern campaign. We just finished the northern campaign. And then the summary statement is basically where we are. We kind of started that with chapter 11, but we're really going to do the summary statement today, basically with chapter 12, really. Okay. And we're going to try and do chapter 12 and 13. And 13, this is where we're coming now. So we're coming into the point where Israel is now dividing the land. So we're going to try and get to Israel remaining challenge. We're going to try and get to 13. I think we can do it. We can do it. I know we can. So if we're looking at, because everybody was talking about Canaan and wanting to know about Canaan, and Pastor, you can help out with this. This is what Canaan looks like prior to Joshua. So if we looking at here's the Hivites, right? Hivites. Mm-hmm. Remember they conquered them, the Hivites. So we have the Hivites here. We have the Hivites here. We also have the Edomites. We have the Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Jebusites, and Palestine. I don't talk about that just yet. The Moabites, the Amorites, and you have all of these little bitty groups together. And think about these little groups and what they conquered. So this is just prior to Joshua, okay? So now if we look here now, and I think I forgot my one map, but if we look here now, here's the conquest. So remember, we started off, where did we say? We had the central campaign, right? Started with the central campaign. So if we look here, now I got to find it now because I've been looking at this map all this time and now I can't. But if we're looking at the central campaign in here, we're supposed to be seeing where they started off. And in that central campaign where they started, I have a different one. Where they started off, we had Gilgal, Ai, Jericho. Somebody saying something. Okay.
Right.
We had those in that central campaign, right?
Right. Jericho was the start.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Jericho. I'm sorry. Jericho. Yeah. Jericho, Ai twice. And then, okay. Right. And their headquarters was Gilgal.
Yes.
So
branch from there.
Right. And so when we're looking at this, because the southern campaign is when they came down and then they went back and conquered the northern campaign. Okay. And so we can see here where we have Hezrah, all of those last ones that we talked about. Right? You have anything else? But if you look here, here's Moab, here's Edom, which they actually conquered. Go ahead. And
the upper campaign was harder because of the the hills and the clefts and all of that. It was more difficult to do the travel. And last week, someone had asked, or the week before, about the time span, and all the research that I could find, this was years. It was not a fast conquest, and they're not even done yet. It proves that this is a huge land, but the more you look at this, and then I'm going to let her go forward, the more you look at this, not just the map, but the more we read this and see all of this that was conquested, you start to see why Israel is fighting now. Because God gave them a lot of land that they are not currently controlling. He gave them a lot of land, and that's why Israel is so adamant about the Gaza Strip and so many other things that are taking place even right now in 2022, because many of the Arab countries and some of the others are trying to reclaim the land through other powers like Western powers, the United States, and some of the other Eastern powers in that area. But when you read this in Joshua and in Deuteronomy and parts of Numbers, we realize that God did give Israel all of this land, all of it, and it's recorded in his holy scriptures.
Okay, that's Barney. Is this actually? So if we look here, so this is again the land of Canaan at the time of Joshua. So if we look again, I just wanted to try and bring a comparison, bring the two separate maps, but then bring the comparison together for us again. So if we looked at it, we saw the Hittites was on there. Here's the Amorites, the Moabites, the Edomites, the Ammonites, and then if I'll read that later. Here we have like the Philistines or Philistines here was on that coastal land,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And also Palestine was
which they don't have yet.
right, which they don't have yet. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. But if we look here, so we look again, here is their headquarters. We had Jericho. We had Ai, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had those, but then we went
Well, we went south
we
first.
went south first. So if we look and we go south, so then we did Hebron, Lachish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then get those things. We did those, and then they come right on back up and go here.
Yes, they went back up.
So they went back and got the northern.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just a little bit. So Canaan denotes the coastline of Palestine. The promised land is called the promised land because it was promised to Abraham. It's also called the Holy Land because it was holy unto the Lord. And Palestine or Philistia because it was in part at least the land of the Philistines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody? That's some of y'all history you were asking for. Right?
And they're still fighting. No, they're still fighting now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening over there right now. They're still struggling with the Philistines and the same old enemies throughout all this time, and it has not gone away. And the scripture said it would not until Jesus comes and settles it. So I don't know, all these countries that come up with the peace plans. I remember when they said that the Trump organization, that his administration, along with Jared Kushner, had brought a peace treaty, and that they were going to be able to settle their differences. And I was laughing because it was laughable, because I know that they're not going to. Mm-hmm. I know that they're not going to settle their differences. They may agree on another part of land or another strip of land, but this won't be settled until the Lord comes. Mm-hmm. There will not be any guaranteed peace in the Middle East until the Lord comes. Mm. Or until the Antichrist shows up.
Mm. Okay.
Okay.
So chapter 12, we're just looking at, and this is just the first 8 verses of the chapter, which is saying, now these are the kings of the land which the children of Israel smote and possessed their land on the other side Jordan toward the rising of the sun, from the river Arnon unto Mount Hermon and all the plain of the east. Shahan, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, and ruled from Arior, which is upon the bank of the river Arnon, and from the middle of the river, and from half Gilead, even unto the river Jabbok, which is the border of the children of Ammon. I wouldn't go read all of them.
And from the plain to the sea of Chinnereth on the east, and unto the sea of the plain, even the salt sea on the east, the way to, Lord have mercy, Beth Shemoth, I guess, and from the south under Ashdod, Pisgah, and the coast of Og, king of Bashan, which was the remnant of the giants that dwelt at Ashtaroth and at Indre, and reigned in Mount Hermon and in Salca, and all Bashan unto the border of the Geshurites and the Maacathites, and half Gilead, the border of Sihon, king of Heshbon.
Them did Moses, the servant of the Lord, and the children of Israel smite. And Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave it from possession unto the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh. And these are the kings of the country which Joshua and the children of Israel smote on this side Jordan on the west, from Baal-Gad in the valley of Lebanon, even unto the Mount Helek that goeth up to Sir, which Joshua gave unto the tribes of Israel for a possession according to their divisions, in the mountains and in the valleys and in the plains and in the springs and in the wilderness and in the south country, the Hittites and the Amorites and the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites and the Jebusites.
And it made it clear there in that 8th verse. It talked about all of these campaigns and how difficult they were in the mountains and in the valleys and in the plains and in the springs and in the wilderness. They fought everywhere.
Right.
And they took over everything. This is just a portion of it, these 8 verses. It goes on and on and on in this chapter of everything that they've conquered.
Right. So as
far.
we see here, it says it retells the conquest of Canaan in rapid succession.
Yes.
So it's not getting what we did before in
No.
those first 11 chapters.
No.
What we have now is right here in this 12th chapter. What we have is a summary.
It's a huge, huge land.
Right.
Huge land.
Right.
And they were conquering all of it.
Right. So as we go on from verse 9 to 23, it just tells us again, the kings of Jericho, I wasn't going to read them, but here it all is. It's just saying who was the king of whatever place. And we recall some of those in the previous scriptures. So the king of Jericho, we won the king of Ai, which we know. Beside Bethel, king of Jerusalem, we didn't really say, but we didn't really talk about Jerusalem per se, but we did do Hebron, Jarmuth, Kish, Eglon, Debar, Gezer. Yep.
Yes.
So we talked
Adullam.
about them. So we talked about some of these, and those are some of those other ones in previous chapters. And this is just a summary in this chapter 12, saying what all they and who all they conquered.
By the end of this chapter, we're going to find that it's 31 kings.
And that's what it says. It does. At verse 24, it says the king of Tezrah won. All the kings, 30 and 1. Isn't that something?
31 kings were conquered in this whole time.
That's supposed to be from. So we move from one conquered place to the next. This is just telling us who all, without all that other stuff, without the land of what the sun standing still, or without the putting their foot on their necks, without the getting all the cattle, without the hailstones, without making those little altars, or not altars, but also using the stones that we saw. So
And
it's
some
just
of the
saying
ones
right
that
now,
were burned up.
right?
It's unbelievable. It also tells us as we see what's happening in the world today, because it doesn't make sense to read the scripture if we're not going to relate it. As we see what's happening in the world today, we understand the concept of war and how it was and how it's working today. The whole idea today of any country or any nation going into war, they're using various reasons or terms like we're going to keep them from getting weapons, or we're going to stop them from invading another area, or what have you. But most of the time, the war is to take over the territory. The war is to go in and to conquer that land, which is exactly the example, or shall I say, the process that God put into place early on on the earth. In this area, God was showing all of the rest of the earth, this is what is going to take place with war. This is what's going to happen. Later in the scriptures, and we come back to this 12th chapter, but later in the scriptures, especially when you get out of the Judges to Samuel, remember when the Lord told Samuel, you better tell the people to make sure that they want a king. I know they want a king like all the other lands that they see, but I am their king. I'm the one that's keeping them. I'm the one that, obviously they've forgotten their history. I'm the one that continually gave them the land that I promised to their forefathers. And I'm the one that continually keeps their land. I promised in Numbers, I promised in Deuteronomy that I would send rain, and I would send latter rain, that I not only would give them the land, but I would make certain that the land was cared for. I would make sure that it exuded the milk and honey that was promised. But the people in that time of Samuel said, no, we want a king. And the Lord told Samuel, you tell them that when that happens, he's going to take their sons and daughters and put them into war, because that was the process during those times. And quiet as it's kept, it's still the process today. It still is. What do you think we're doing in all of the lands where we are.
Mhm.
We went over to Afghanistan. They fought hard, real hard. But our goal was not just to flush out Saddam Hussein or the Hezbollah that they said they were seeking. The United States and the countries that were connected with the United States, they were going to take that land.
Mhm.
When they went over to get Saddam Hussein, because they said that he was the originator or the real cause of the Gulf War, back when George Bush was president. They said they were seeking out Saddam Hussein, for one, because of his war crimes, but secondly, they said because he was threatening the Gulf region. Well, that was all part true, but they were also planning and did do a lot to take over the land. They were going to take over that area in Arabia, and so all of those countries continued to fight to keep their land and their territory from being taken over. And that's still what's happening today. But we see here in this 12th chapter is you start wondering, why did God chronicleize all of this? Why is he telling us this? Why is all of this all lined up? And he says one by one, he's showing us completely clearly that this land belongs to him now. And he has given it to Israel. This is no longer the land of whoever was dwelling there in Canaan.
Right.
And God is making it clear. He took over the land, the king, and all of that.
All of it, yes.
And it's chronicalized, so no one can say later that when all this land, no, you didn't get this land, you didn't get that land. No, God named it.
Mhm.
Deber, Hama, Libnah,
Mhm.
Makkedah, Tapa, Aphek, Madah, Shemram, and Ramarin, I think. Shemamaran. He made it clear. There is no mistake of what land and what territory is his. They're going to take it all. They're going to take it all. And it's important that we understand that God gives us all.
Mhm.
He's not going to give us a little bit. He's going to give us all. When we give it to God and he says, I'm going before you and this is going to be yours, well, that's what it's going to be. I love the songs where it says we let the devil know we taking it back, because it was ours before he stole it. It was ours, and it didn't. None of this land changed. No one conquers God. No one conquers God. They may trick God's people. They may pull some strings, but you don't conquer God, and it belongs to him. Psalm 24 said that the earth is the Lord's,
yes,
the world, the fullness therein, and they that dwell therein. It's all his, and no one else can conquer what the Lord has taken. And he's proven himself to Joshua. One last question or comment. Imagine every day. I mean, it's exciting and you're doing what God said, but imagine every day having to go, or every week, every month, every 2 months, having to go and to war in another land to take what God has, what God has given. Imagine that. And then when you imagine that as the heavyset, the short guy.
I don't know who the heavy set.
Oh my Lord.
They call
his name. No, he's a preacher. It'll come to me. Hagee, thank you. John Hagee says, this is exactly what the Lord is having us do in the spirit every day. We're battling for the land in the spirit every day. Everything that the Lord gave, everything that he promised, we have to take it. We have to possess it. We have to have it. We have to get it. And the same way that he gave them this physically, this is what we're taking back spiritually. And it's a real war, but it belongs to God.
So like the scriptures, taking it back by force.
Yes. And it belongs to God. God has given it to us. He's given us our homes. He's given us the territory around us. He's given us our own bodies. He's given us our healings. He's given us our own thoughts. He's given us all of the spiritual ground that we fight for, that's around us. And he's given us more. and he's given it to us through the promise, but we have to progress, come together, be obedient to him, and do it just like Joshua and them did it. And God will start writing, and the others will lose because God has already given this to us. The enemy knows that, but Lord knows we have to know it so that we can take over this territory. Now he gave it to him physically. He's given it to us spiritually.
But couldn't you say he also gave it to them spiritually because of what he said to them?
He did. They had to believe him.
Right.
Yes.
Because he had already told them it was theirs.
Yes.
A lot of times he said that he had promised it was theirs and said it to them. And that's just like with us. If he promised something to us, doesn't mean that we're going to get it tomorrow.
It just means it's ours.
Right.
It means it's ours.
We just have to continue to do what he says and be obedient.
And some things that are going to manifest themselves physically, we have to spiritually take them first.
Before you move on, I have one question.
Uh-huh.
You see how you have in number 9, it says the Jericho one, the king of Ai, which is beside Bethel one.
Uh-huh.
So it's interesting, and you all have to explain this. So in number 9, they say Ai is beside Bethel, but then down in 16, the king of Mecca one, the king of Bethel one. So if it's beside Ai, why does it come down later in number 16?
Well, that's because he's letting you know where Ai is. You get what I mean?
No, I was talking about Bethel, because he said which is beside Bethel, that's one. And then he said the king of Bethel one.
Bethel was by Ai.
Right.
Let me see if I can find one. See, I just brought the map back.
Okay.
See Ai and Bethel.
See, that's what it's saying in that first verse. It's just like an awkward explanation.
Right.
It's saying Ai, it took over Ai's king, which is beside Bethel, next to Bethel. Then it comes down later and tells you when Bethel was taken over.
Right.
So see,
it got reports of Bethel.
It got Ai, but it didn't get Bethel right away.
Because Bethel is not Bethlehem, but what is Bethel?
Bethel is one of those. It's not Bethlehem. No, it's just a city in Canaan, or in Canaan. Wasn't Bethlehem? No. Bethlehem is further down.
Okay.
Bethlehem is underneath Jerusalem. Bethel at this point doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it's still there, but they don't call it Bethel anymore. And if you notice, if you look as the Old Testament progresses, you're going to find that they joined a lot of those names. So for example, you're going to hear them say something about Kadesh Barnea, and you're going to hear them say Bethel Gilgal. They combined some of them, which tells me that over the years, those cities ended up joining. Over the years, over the generations, they ended up joining together. But no, that first verse in number 9 is just telling us where Ai is. Okay. But then they took over Bethel later.
Well, that makes sense now that you said that they ended up joining, because now it makes sense that they all combined because the cities combined. Okay,
yeah, a lot of them did. A lot of them did later. It just you'll read it as you keep reading in the Old Testament. You think, oh, okay, I remember this place. Yeah, I remember that place. Just like down south, y'all know a lot of the cities down south that were there when we were younger, they're not there anymore. My mother's homeland, cotton plant is gone. It's not there anymore. The city is just gone. And that's where she was born.
It was just across the railroad tracks anyway.
Exactly. I mean, you can ride a bike through it in 20 minutes. You can ride a bike through it in 20 minutes.
Across the railroad tracks anyway.
Cotton plant.
But it's gone now.
Or across what was it? The street. Now you cross the street.
In some of those areas, you had like 19, 20 mayors.
So
and they were mayor over about 18 blocks.
So our summary statement for these chapters is that Israel had secured effective control of Canaan and the Trans Jordan. Although it seems these many battles practically happened overnight, which it does. If you read it, it sounds like they happened overnight.
It
When it
does.
really, it took them 67 years to conquer this land, or this, you know, those, to have those battles. And Israel's victory. Go ahead.
It was actually more than 6 to 7. I mean, they're being generous. In all actuality, it did seem like in the reading is so exciting. It just seemed like it happened, bam, 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 just like that. But it really was a long.
Well, it depends on what you read. Some say 6 to 7. Some said 7 to 9. So it's kind of like, what do you?
Well, see, the problem with that is after the next chapter, it's going to say Joshua was old.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just saying. I know these are theologians and they have their interpretations, but that's just not accurate. But that's.
I agree. So, well, he was. Well, no, okay.
Well, exactly.
So
he was young when he started. He wasn't real.
But wasn't he 40 or something when he started with Moses?
Right.
I think he was. I think he was 30 or so.
A little old. Okay. So.
And then Moses they were 40 years in the wilderness. So that would have made Joshua probably about 70 or 80.
Right.
But that wasn't old.
That's
the equivalent of, that's probably the equivalent of our 35.
I don't know. So he says Israel's victory was really God's victory.
Can't hear you.
Israel as his instrument to judge Canaan's unbelievable people.
Yeah.
So when we look at this, this is kind of the summary statement of that chapter and everything that happened prior to this chapter. No.
If God says something today, and we're not going to dominate it, y'all talk to us. If God said something to us today about something that was ours, then he said, well, I'm giving it to you. It's going to be yours. And I don't know, somebody received prophecy or something. If they don't go get it, then they'll probably never realize what God said would be theirs.
Right.
They'll probably never realize it.
Right.
Secondly, sometimes we're not really listening to God.
That's true.
And hearing what he said is ours. We're not internalizing what he said belongs to us. And so the enemy is having a good time with our stuff that really belongs to us. And the enemy knows that it belongs to us, but because we didn't really hear God and we weren't really paying attention, then is she calling me?
She's calling.
Then excuse me, you all.
Which is true. We have to hear it and accept it and believe it. And you'll hear a lot of people talk about, you know, I just kept struggling, including me. and it's like he already laid out what for you to do. And when I look at these different conquests, I was talking to somebody because I heard something about the Queen of England and the King of Philip, and some of this you kind of know, but you don't know, you just don't remember. But how they had 52 different countries, and I think they said someone gave me a quote that said there is not a country that Britain has not set or the sun has not set on any country that Britain has not owned. And so it just like it had so many different countries and colonies and places that's what all of this made it seem like to me when we're talking about the different places. So Israel just is as wide and as powerful as when you think about the British kingdom in terms of conquest.
Yes.
Anybody else? I started.
Yeah, we have time.
Okay, good. Okay. So with chapter 13.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. Which was their kingdom? Where did the giants come from? I know when they first went to spy out the land, they talked about these giants. Were those the Philistines?
Philistine had some. I'm looking for the name. It was Rapha. They call them the Raphadim. Megiddo had some, 21 or 18. Aphek had giants. the Philistine has giants, Aphek had giants, the Megiddo had giants, and there was one other that had giants.
The
And
one
I'm-
you mentioned last week, right? Anak or something like that. Anak or something like that.
Anakin?
I'm
Yeah.
looking for it. What is it again?
Anakin?
Anakin. Yes, they had giants. So they didn't wipe out all the giants in this in this campaign. They did not. There were giants that were still left in this campaign. They a lot of them would flee and go to safer territories.
They
And
had the giants.
got away
scared.
from, yeah, they had the giants scared. Yes. God was amazing. He was bigger than the giants. But yes, all those areas had giants.
Right,
All of-
because in the beginning they were scared of the giants, and then they're ending up with the giants, at the end of their conquest. They still, try to eradicate these giants.
Yes, the
Everyone.
giants got scared of them, and then the giants made a return with the Philistines until David.
Right, right. Mm,
Until David.
okay, I'm gonna see. Okay. So now we're going to chapter 13. I'm getting there. I'm starting. Okay. So with chapter 13, we look at the first verse. It says, now Joshua was old and stricken in years. And the Lord said unto him, thou art old and stricken in years, and there remaineth yet very much land to be possessed.
That's a funny verse, isn't it? I'm sure the Lord wrote that verse, but they didn't write that right. It sounds funny.
Why? Because it says he
It
was
says,
old
now
and stricken.
Joshua was old and stricken in years, and the Lord said, and thou art old and stricken in years. Yeah.
He just let him know he old.
But even though he's old and stricken in years, after all of this that they've done, you got to enjoy God's writing. After all of this that they've done, he told them it's still a lot
Still
to do. You
right.
still have a lot of land. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. It's amazing.
Mhm,
And his age was not restricting him.
You can have it.
mhm, mhm.
His age was not restricting him. Sometimes we want to throw old people away.
Oh, that's true. Sometimes we do.
His age was not restricting him. He may not have been doing the actual fighting
Right.
anymore, but God was still going to use him
Mhm.
to do
I
something.
think that's an important point too. We do tend to say, the older we got to do this. We know they got the wisdom, but when he said to him, you're advanced in age, but there's a lot yet to be done. Yeah,
Right.
it was like you might think you old, but you got some stuff to do. So don't think you finna sit down and rest.
Yes.
Because basically you got to finish this task at hand, kind of, almost, sort of. Or you got to complete your portion of what needs to be done.
I
Mhm.
got a quick question regarding verse 2. And I don't know why she made this writing so small, but this is the land that yet remaineth, all the borders of the Philistines and all Geshurun. Now, of course, we know from reading further in the Old Testament, and we also know from reading some of the writing in the New Testament, that somewhere along the line here, Israel fell off because they didn't take care of all of the Philistine land.
Right. Because
And they didn't take care of all of Jeshurun. So somewhere or another, they fell off. Do you think they fell off because Joshua got old? Because we know that they did it. They didn't complete this.
Right.
They didn't complete this. You had to go and read further in the Bible to find that out. But they didn't complete this. And God intended for them to have all that land. So when King Saul and David and all of them was facing those giants and facing the Philistines, that should have already been Israel's land.
Right.
Maybe didn't okay. I'm kind of now I kind of see the answer, but maybe because what did he say at the beginning? I mean, at the end of, was it chapter 11, where he started saying, you take this part, you take this part, you take this part. It wasn't as a united group. as it was before, because everybody else had their little portions, and then they started
They
ruling.
didn't have their portions then, did they?
He was
It's
starting.
Yeah.
starting to
At,
divide.
in 11, he started giving them different portions, and they took over. And then maybe they were like, I'm listening to you, but I'm not listening to you. But at the same time, they weren't as I could say, I don't know, I'm guessing. Maybe they weren't as anointed and weren't as listening to God as Joshua was.
Mm.
So you think that sometimes when we get a little something, we get comfortable?
Because
Because
maybe
we-
they started, well, maybe some of them started, some of the older ones started passing away too. Because you know how it's just kind of like now, a lot of our older ones have traditions, but our young ones just like, okay, we listening. But then when you're looking at it right now, it's a lot of the younger ones, well, that's always capturing the news. It's all a lot of the younger ones that's dying, and a lot of the younger ones running away or missing, or even in football and stuff, it's a lot of the younger ones. And when the older ones go, it's like, oh wow, where are they 99? Okay, we expected that. But then when you look at the ones that are younger, it's like, okay, they're younger, they got info, but then where is the wisdom that they passed on? What is the knowledge that they passed on? How
We're
did they
not gonna
show
do
us
it
how to
that
do
way.
something else so that we are able to conquer? And maybe that's what happened here. I don't know.
But isn't some of it too, but isn't it some of it too, from the lands they were conquered, some of those surrounding, some of those Israelites start picking up some of their, is what she said, their
Yeah.
tradition. So, and then they started having, if you look at number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Israel failed in driving out all these people, and pagan influence soon corrupted them.
Yes.
So isn't that a portion of
Absolutely.
what started happening with them?
Absolutely.
A lot of it.
Israel stopped being obedient.
Right.
And I think it had to do with Joshua's
Mhm.
getting older and not as strong in that leadership. And as Sister Felicia said, and them breaking off. If you look at the third bullet point, it says various peoples continue to inhabit Canaan's more remote areas, and the individual groups, tribes that were, had the challenge to complete the conquest by exterminating the smaller groups.
Mhm.
But they weren't necessarily doing it. They weren't dedicated to the task.
Mhm.
They had already gotten a lot of their inheritance, and so many things had happened. And yes, they were getting comfortable
So with their inheritance, they were doing their thing.
in certain cases, yes. And this 13th chapter, though, speaks of a lot of territory that Moses actually gave
Right.
before his demise, before he was gone. A lot of the inheritances that these Joshua was just carrying out Moses's declarations
Mhm.
for who would inherit what and when. God had this all together.
Mhm.
There was no question as to what God was going to do. I mean, you talk about a wonderful will
Right.
and testament. God had it all set. He knew who was going to get what, who was going to have what area, what he just knew.
Mhm.
And he had set them up to be successful for all of their time, and to have flowing milk and honey,
Mhm. Mhm.
like he promised. It's just that they squandered.
They squandered.
Yeah, they
It's
eventually.
no different than us or anybody.
Exactly.
No different.
Is what happens today. Absolutely.
So we look at verse 7. Now therefore divide this land for an inheritance unto the 9 tribes and the half tribe of Manasseh. 8 says, with which the Reubenites and the Gadites had received their inheritance, which Moses gave them. This is what you were just saying, beyond Jordan eastward, even as Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave them.
Right.
So.
Right. They were all dispersing now, splitting up and getting a chance to inhabit it. And it was, I mean, in all honesty, it was time. You can't just war.
Mhm.
It was time for some rewards to all of what we've done, all of what they did. It's just that they were to remember who gave it to them,
Mhm.
and to remember whose it belonged to, and to stay true to the commandments, to stay true to what God said. Don't cohabitate, don't do this, don't serve other gods. And all of that remained. And although they will say that the Old Testament was just that, the Old Testament, and that we're now in the New Testament and we're in the new dispensation, that the Old Testament does not apply, but it does. It does.
So if we're looking at this, as we say, it's saying that we're seeing who received what.
Yes.
So what
Yes.
tribe received whatever parcel that's of land they received. We seeing this with this, and that's why I didn't put the whole chapter, but we're just kind of seeing what they put. The interesting thing here is the Levites
Yes.
didn't get anything.
Right.
Well, they got land, but they didn't get their inheritance was God, is what they're saying.
Right. They got
That
the
was
best.
that was their inheritance.
Yes. He promised to never wipe the Levites away. The Levites will remain because their inheritance was the Lord.
And the Levites were the priests.
Yes.
So these Levites, remember, so these Levites, the priests, were the ones who actually carried that ark, right?
The
Of the covenant.
Levites were the priests and the scribes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, but I know I'm
And-
saying, Lord, I want some of that land.
Yeah, but
I got you too, but I want that.
but if you and I were living at that point for what we have and the call of ministry that we've answered, we wouldn't get any land. We would be a scribe or a priest because of the calling that we acknowledged on our lives. And all preachers and
Well,
you know,
I denounce my priesthood. I denounce my priesthood. I want some land.
you know, they really twisted it today. I saw earlier,
I'm just
and it was really hurtful. I saw earlier this morning a pastor, and I'm sure you all have seen it,
okay.
a pastor that well, they said that he choked a woman and threw her out. And some weeks before, they said that somebody came in to rob him at gunpoint, and this all happened during the services. But what I heard in criticism from everyone who describes the stories is that he had a Rolls Royce and that he has a lot of jewelry and that he has a lot of money and that he is ministering in a poor area. And I told Dr. Marbley that it's really strange that is really what troubles people. What troubles people is, in most cases, what God has given to his people.
Mhm.
It troubles everyone else,
Yeah.
and it still troubles everyone else today. It troubled them then, and it troubled them today. Is what God has given to his people. As we can see, God is pretty lavish, and he was pretty generous
Hello.
in all of this land and everything that he was breaking up and giving to. But God had no problem doing that as long as the people were obedient. As long as they were obedient. But the Levites would have God as an inheritance. So what that means is they had everything.
I didn't have no land.
Everywhere. They did. They had everything everywhere. God owns it all. And they have God as their inheritance.
The
So,
people got God too.
I think no, the people have their land. The people can, and Levites can go anywhere. And that's where they have to see it. Because they were going to have to travel with God and go where God says. It's just that people today, though, they really believe, in all honesty, I think they believe that the heads of the ministries and that the purveyors of the ministries should be poor. I think that's what they think. And I don't really understand that concept.
When we say that God has everything.
Yeah,
And he
you
provides.
you want the person that's relaying what God has and what God can do. You want that person to have nothing and to represent nothing. I don't know why you would listen to them if God got all of this. How come you don't have anything?
That's what I say. I say you should have something. But I could see back in those times how when the Levites were the people that listened to God and people had to bring things to their feet. That's why I can see where people get that misunderstanding too about, everybody, you ain't doing nothing but giving the money to the pastor. And yet you had this big old church with this big mortgage, or a small church with a big mortgage still to you. And they're like and most of the preachers, like I said, most of the preachers I know are working preachers, have their pensions or their retirement funds or whatever the case may be that they're using, or have some other kind of business growing that have, big inheritances of money like that, or they worked hard for it. And so that they can do exactly what they're supposed to do, which is deliver the word. Because really, if they depended up on people to get them stuff nowadays, I'd be like Pastor Diana.
Denounce
yeah.
that. Denounce
no,
that priesthood.
But I'm also like this. People nowadays listen to people who inherit and who have a lot of things. I mean, why do we follow Forrest Riley? Why do we follow Les Brown? Why do we follow Beyonce? Y'all know.
Right.
Why do we follow all of the Jay-Z? Why do we look at all of these people who got all of this money? Even in basketball, why are we looking at all of them? Why do we want to be like them, or why do we want to follow them?
Right.
Because of what they have. So I'm not saying that I'll go this route. So we want our ministers and our people to talk to us to have just as much, to be just as diversified in how they get funding, but to even give us the word and the pathway to eternal life, and eternal life without condemnation,
Right.
and without being banished. Because I'm gonna tell y'all, when it get 85 degrees and muggy and hot up here, I'd be like, ain't no way I'm going to Arizona and they got 100 and some temperature. So ain't no way. The devil and his imps. Hey, I'm sorry.
Ain't going down there.
So,
It's probably 3,000 degrees down there.
So the Levites, their inheritance is greater than, in short essence, and I stopped with my ranching and raving.
All right.
It is.
Is there anyone else? Anything? We made it to chapter 13.
We just didn't get done.
Here you are.
Oh, that's it? That's all of it?
Yep, that's all of it.
Okay. Well, good.
That's all of it. That's all of chapter 13. It's just that they were dividing up the land. And then Levites, basically. I'm not go to 14. We did 14. Oops, no, we're not doing 14 today.
No, not tonight.
No.
I'm sorry. I got one piece to add to that.
Go ahead.
With that pastor you were talking about, I don't know his particular state. I don't know his background. I don't know none of that stuff. But you're right. Instead of people focusing in on, he could have been an out-of-state person that came in. Instead of people focusing in on that, they're focusing in on the jury and they're focusing in on that. But then they're like, well, like, just because he should have given. That may not have, he probably did, but ain't nobody said nothing about that. But I don't think anything requires that he has to give everything he has and start over again. Although I wouldn't award to church like that in the district, but
he seems a little shysty, but it doesn't matter. I'm just saying how everyone looks at it. It's clear that they don't want the leadership of the church to represent anything.
We're supposed to represent him and look like we should. Okay, I'm not going there. I'm not going there.
Because you represent him and he owns everything, then you're entitled to it. If you follow his word and do his commandments, he said it.
I agree. I don't disagree with you.
You can't possibly read Joshua in those books and not see that. It's impossible. You see what God is giving his people.
Well, I just want you and Pastor Marbley to know, Pastor Marbley. I just want y'all to know, anytime y'all don't want y'all inheritance that y'all living in and what's in your accounts and stuff, I'll take it for you. And that way you go out.
As the song said on Sunday, it belongs to me. They said salvation belongs to me. Right? Or what God has for me is for me.
Amen.
Okay, that's
I have a question.
Of course.
What were the 3 miracles so far that happened in Joshua? The 3 miracles so far. And another question is, I know Joshua, the Lord told him that, he was getting up in years, but the Lord could have extended Joshua's life too. Because he was only 110. Was he not when he died? So why did God not extend his life? I mean, because God could have, but I mean, I know that's a question.
Yes, he could have.
He could have.
Don't know
Yes,
that.
it could. Don't know that. So what are the three miracles, y'all?
Number one, entering in the parting of the Jordan,
Mm-hmm.
the waters.
Yep.
Was one. What was the second one?
The second, what, the walls fell down?
Exactly. The walls falling down at Jericho. And the third one? Now, I know y'all know the third one. The sun.
The sun stood still.
Right.
Oh,
Sun standing still. Those are the three so far.
Yeah, so this Joshua is a great marker for us, you know, like when we're thinking about the Old Testament, you know, we had Exodus, you know, them leaving Egypt, and then Deuteronomy when they were in the wilderness. Now Joshua conquered all this land. And I don't know if we're going to continue on in Joshua, but as we go forth, is all the stuff that happened in Judges and Kings all happen in all these different.
That's right.
Ah,
Amen.
point.
Amen. I mean, it's the blueprint, literally. It's literally the blueprint. And even beyond that, beyond just the Old Testament, today, what do you think they're fighting about over there right now? This same land, the very same land, they are still fighting over it right now. Those same areas, very same, for all of these years and for years to come.
Can we see God at play in the events that are happening now over there? Can we see God at work still?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we see him. We see where many of them compromised and started to live like they shouldn't have. And we see what turned up, what happened. We see some of the land is missing. Some of this land is modern day Turkey. And y'all know that Turkey is not even considered a holy place anymore. So we see God's hand at work, and we see God keeping his remnant. We see other nations come in to assist Israel. And many people say they don't like Israel, but we see that's God's hand. Right. That's God working and keeping that core. He's keeping that remnant there, whereas all of the rest of them are trying to. Israel is still one of the most wealthiest nations on earth. Israel has nuclear capability and all of those particular things, whereas a lot of the other land around there does not. So you can see God's hand in it today. And Israel is a little small place, and you would have thought that in all this time that somebody would have wiped them out, you know, just took care of. Israel is not that large at all. And you would have thought that one of these huge nations with these huge armies and things would have taken them over, but they have not. And you can clearly see God's hand.
So Israel is still part of the original Canaan?
Yes, still is. They still are. And that whole area is, and unfortunately, though, over the years, of course, you know, they stole Africa, and they stole Africa, and they stole a lot of the darker inhabited lands, which was also all a part of that. All a part of that. I mean, if you look at how large it is, out of all the conquests we talked about, God told Joshua, there's still a whole lot more.
Still large.
But now if you go over there, it's not that vast. So that means that a lot of other people stole a lot of that land. A lot of it is primarily the land that's inhabited by darker skinned people.
No different, huh?
No different.
Different.
And yes, Israel is still in Canaan. That still would be considered Canaan. Jerusalem in that area, Turkey, Iran, and all of that area would still be considered Canaan. Parts of Arabia and all of that would still be considered Canaan in the Old Testament. But it's all separate now. It's all separated now and not called one land. Interesting, isn't it? The whole Middle East.
So they lost a little bit of their land little by little until now. To this day, it's just Israel over there.
Yeah, they have a very small amount now, and Palestine has a lot of it. The Hezbollah is controlling a lot of it. Iran is controlling a lot of it. Then you move over on the other side, and you have the Arabias, and you have Afghanistan, and all of those particular areas all would have been Canaan.
So it's like a remnant is still preserved.
Absolutely. And is very powerful. That preserved remnant is very powerful. Very. All of them know that they can't do anything to Israel.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
They know it. And that's God's hand.
Right.
That's God's hand. All the rest.
And my thought, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
My thoughts now is like the governments and the nations always trying to interfere over there. I'm like, y'all need to just stay out of there. This is a God thing.
Yes.
No one will ever, not a physical person will control any of that. That is like, it has a bubble over it that we can't see, that you're just not going to infiltrate that as long as we got God. So y'all need to just leave them alone and get up out of there.
But it's just
True.
like wasn't it President Obama who said, "Why are we over there?
Why we policing?
Why are we
the whole
why are
world?
we
Yes.
doing that?" You know, it was same deal, difference. It's all so.
But we're still doing all of the same things. We're trying to conquest lands and exactly what Russia's trying to do now. And unfortunately, that's never going to stop.
Right.
Never going to stop. But they're not going to be able to take over Israel.
Right.
God is watching over it,
Right.
and he's keeping it. And eventually, at the end, they're going to prevail. And God said any friend to Israel is a friend of his.
Mm-hmm.
What he said in his word. It's interesting. It's exciting when you start reading it and then looking at it. It's real exciting. Very exciting. I'm just surprised that it doesn't necessarily talk about it, but there were a lot of dark-skinned people over there that had land that doesn't have it now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he gave a lot of them. Caleb, and when you look at all of the ones that Moses dispatched and gave, that was in that darker area. Those were dark people. Those were black people.
Well, we'll do a little because we're gonna start talking because Caleb is coming up. Caleb is coming up.
Caleb was black.
We're gonna come up. So let's do a little background research on Caleb.
Yeah,
I say a lot of them were because when you think about where they were located and where they came from, everybody was pretty much black.
Yeah, I try not to do that too often because I realize that in our Christianity, we have to be loving and caring and try to, so I don't want to make it too.
Keep the peace, the harmony.
Yeah, I want to make it too. I'm just saying that if you do your own research and you find that a lot of those territories were dark people, but the dark people don't own those territories anymore.
Right.
That's interesting. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. So we're gonna do a little research on that.
Yeah.
So. All right, if nothing else, we did too.
We did.
Did too.
Good evening, Deke. Good to see you, man.
We did too. We were able to do two. So
She said,
happy. I'm
Hey,
happy.
Pastor, likewise.
All right.
All right, you all.
It's time to
See
eat.
you.
It's
time.
time something one of these times.
So
So
we-
we gonna be able to get up.
so we continue with Joshua next week, or we?
See with Joshua
Yes.
next week.
Staying with Joshua.
We just gonna finish Joshua
We're going all the way
completely out.
through. If y'all don't
Oh,
mind.
okay.
What
If
day?
y'all don't mind,
What
going all the
day?
way through.
Wednesday. I mean next week, Wednesday. We'll see y'all
And it's gonna be-
Sunday for church. Huh?
It's gonna be 15 and 16 or
14 and 15.
14 and 15. Okay.
If y'all don't mind, we're going to go all the way through to the end of Joshua.
Okay.
And then we'll see where we go from there.
Mhm. Y'all should see this PowerPoint. This PowerPoint is long.
Amen. Love you all.
We love you all.
Okay.
Sunday
All right.
morning.
See you Sunday morning. All
See you
right.
Sunday morning.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.